Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and as per usual, some spicy words here from Christian Horner with regard to Lewis Hamilton and the championship battle that they had last season, praising Charles Leclerc for his hard but fair style, and indicating that was not the case in last year's battle at all. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, wanted to mention this because Fernando Alonso, of course, moving to Aston Martin next season, of course, one legend in Vettel making way for another. Now, apparently, they are effectively fully focused on next year's car. This year's car was a bit of a disaster for Aston Martin. It was okay in race pace, actually, but the quali has been so bad for the majority of the year that it's pretty much written off all chances of this car getting points. So they've decided, look, let's just focus on next year instead. I'm sure this will definitely prove to the taste of Fernando Alonso. He's certainly indicated that he believes Aston Martin have more ambition than their current placement is kind of, is showing, and he has a performance clause as well, or the team has a performance clause in the contract such that if the team doesn't perform, then Alonso can just leave the deal effectively. So they've got to deliver, and that they're going to prioritise Alonso and next year's car over Vettel and this year's car, which makes sense, but it's still potentially going to be rather unfortunate in terms of the way Vettel might indeed finish out his season. This I thought was kind of funny from Alonso as well, just on his mentality, because he's always been that type of guy that's like, look, not only does he want to win, but he wants to make sure everyone else loses, right? And this is a statement right here I thought was kind of funny. I'm that type of guy. I need to make 100% of my thing, and I need to kill whatever strengths other people has. He gives an interesting example here, actually, because we've seen examples recently of, for example, Alonso lining up on the grid and putting down a load of rubber on his kind of starting position, and then covering off other people's starting positions such that they can't do the same thing, just playing for these tiny little mind game advantages. It's always the Alonso way. He even says here that when he used to play tennis, when he'd play with like a professional player, they're very good when the ball arrives traditionally. They're used to very strong shots. So what he would do instead is just play the ball very high. He would just hit the ball up in the air effectively. And when you do that, they make mistakes because the ball arrives very soft. So I can play better tennis when putting the ball high. Putting the ball high is my only chance to beat them. So I do that automatically. It's not only on racing. I just need to destroy the strength of the others and try and maximize mine. I thought that was kind of an interesting insight there into the mind of Fernando Alonso. But let's talk about, of course, the battle last year between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. It was as feisty as it's really ever got in recent memory. This year has been much less feisty. There's been some great battles, don't get me wrong, between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Practically every single weekend, there's some on-track action between the two of them. It's been incredibly clean so far. Verstappen has definitely driven more sensibly, I think, this season, maybe to a certain extent because the pressure of having the World Championship win is now finally off his back, and he can race a little bit more freely and with a bit less pressure. The fact of the matter is, though, the pressure is less because the championship battle is not even close, right? The start of the season, there were some feisty battles, but if the same battles we saw back in Bahrain were happening on the final Grand Prix of the season with the win on the line, I'm sure the driving would have got a little bit more dirty in terms of defending positions. That's what you'd imagine would indeed happen. So, I think the battle has been relatively clean, maybe for a couple of different reasons, but I do think a certain element of it is just because, the battle is not particularly close in the championship. If it was at this time of the season, then we would start to see more like what we saw at the end of last season with the Hamilton versus Verstappen incidents at pretty much every single race at the end of last season, to be honest. This I thought was a pretty interesting statistic as well. But even Christian Horner, right, has been throwing some digs in, as he likes to do, at Lewis Hamilton in last year's racing. He doesn't mention Hamilton by name, but if we read the quote here, we can see what he's talking about, right? Saying he's got a great deal of respect from Charles Leclerc, who has been racing hard but fair so far this season. He says the following, that, Horner says how he admires how Leclerc has fought against his driver over the opening 13 rounds. I have a great deal of respect for the way he's conducted himself, right? You can definitely read between the lines of this one. It's all a bit harder, to be honest. The way he's racing on track, he is hard but fair, and I think the racing between the two guys, there's been a lot of hard racing between the two of them in the first half of the championship, but there hasn't been a single touch, and it's great to see, and it's enjoyable to be a part of, right? This one especially, there hasn't been a single touch, definitely referring to some of the incidents that happened last season between Hamilton and Verstappen at many races, of course, throughout the season, not just the examples here on screen. So, Horner's at it again. He knows what he's doing here at the end of the day. But what do you guys think about this? Because last year was obviously chaotic, right? Both drivers were at fault for various incidents throughout the course of the season. One maybe more than the other, depending on the way you guys see it. This year, there's really been no on-track contact, right? They've had their fair share of battles. Some races haven't been able to get decided by that, though, because, things have gone different ways with, for example, engine failures and the like, and strategy issues, making sure we haven't had maybe as many battles last year as we could have had at the end of the day. But would the on-track action be a little bit more hectic and spicy if the championship was closer between Charles Leclerc and Verstappen? I think certainly certainly that would be the case, right? If it was coming down to the last few races and they were super tight, right, only a few points separating them, I can well imagine that things would get pretty spicy between these two fellas, as it did back in the day in the karting days. There is probably greater maybe respect and friendship between Leclerc and Verstappen as there was between Lewis and Max, but of course Max Verstappen, I don't know why I said two different ways around there, but you guys know what I'm getting at. But I do still think that a potential for tension definitely remains on the cards, but more than likely not this season, because the championship is more than likely already wrapped up. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.